Hello, this is Richard Carafel from Agility PR Solutions, and welcome to PR Profiles, a video series and podcast where we chat with experts in the PR and communications industry because we think PR is the most formidable, dynamic, and rewarding field there is. And we wanted to introduce you to some of our favorite powerhouses in the industry. Today, we're speaking with Gregg Castano, the founder and CEO of NewsDirect. Hi, Gregg.
Hi, Richard. How are you? Nice to be here.
Very well, and pleased to have you. Thanks for joining us. Can you tell us first just a little bit about yourself and about NewsDirect?
Yes. Well, personally, my entire professional career, for the most part, was spent in the newswire industry. Most of that was spent with Business Wire, which is, as most people know, one of the largest newswire services in the world. I spent over 32 years with Business Wire. And ultimately, I became the president there back in 2009 and remained in that role until 2017. Just around this time of year in 2017, I left there. About a year and a half later, after doing a lot of thinking and planning, I decided to launch NewsDirect because I saw a lot of things about the newswire industry that I felt I could build upon and improve in terms of the user experience and the content that can be distributed and so forth. So I felt there was an opportunity there and a place for NewsDirect in that ecosystem.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And like you said, you have been in the comms tech space for over 3 decades. After your, back during your long career at Business Wire, where you started there as a newsroom assistant in the 80s, I believe.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, so during that career.
It's painful to hear, but yes, that's true.
Yeah, I know the feeling, definitely. Now, during that long career, what do you think has stayed the same over the years? And what do you see that still needs changing?
Well, I think what stayed the same is, from the customer perspective, the need to reach their target audience, right? What they use to reach their target audience and who that target audience is has sort of shifted over the years. But that need has remained the same, and it's probably expanded. But certainly, the core function of a newswire service remains reaching, the audiences that are important to brands and to companies and to other types of organizations.
I see. And so do you think there are still some changes that need to be made?
I think there are a lot of changes that need to be made, which is the reason that NewsDirect exists. Essentially, I think from a user experience standpoint, there was a lot of improvements that need to be made because the experience itself had become cumbersome and manual and sort of tedious. Pretty much we've kind of reinvented that whole kind of workflow. In addition to that, I think the pricing model of newswires has become very outdated, as they use metrics for pricing that don't apply any longer in kind of a digital world. For example, the first thing you pay for when you send out a news release is the geographic distribution that you're targeting. And we have this thing now, it's called the internet. And when it goes on the internet, it's available to everybody, everywhere that has an internet connection. So there really is no point to charge for a geographic segment that has become sort of the least important piece of the distribution. The other part that they charge for is word count. And that is a vestige of a far gone past, even before I started there, where in order to get news releases distributed, you have to input them into the system. And to do that, you have to retype them for hard copy. So it was a labor cost at that time, and that obviously no longer exists. So there's really no point in charging someone for a press release that is in excess of 400 words, charging them extra for that. It doesn't cost the newswire service anything incrementally more for sending out a 300-word press release versus sending out a 10,000-word press release. So there's no justification for that in my mind. So we eliminated both of those things, and instead we just charge on a flat rate basis, based on the number of assets or pieces of content that you're distributing. So we changed that. That was a big thing. And probably the most significant thing that we've done, which really is going to start becoming more and more important over the next few years is the ability to send standalone multimedia content. If you want to send out a video or a photo or an infographic over one of the wire services, now you can do that, but you're required to embed that into a text-based press release. And what's happening, as we all know, is we have the emergence of the content marketing industry, whose responsibility and job and function is to create content, and mostly multimedia content, that in many cases, or most cases, don't belong in and would never go in press release. So they're limited in the ability to distribute that content to a broader audience if they don't have the need or desire to embed that in a press release. So we've created a way for them to distribute that content as standalone assets, just the video, just the infographic, downstream to the same destinations as the wire services go to, but without the need for the press release part. And we think that's going to be a very, very big change in the communication space over the next few years, particularly as sort of what we'll call the younger generation, but everyone likes to say the millennials, but certainly them and the people behind them. They grew up in a world where they consumed content in multimedia formats, not necessarily in text-based formats. So as those people kind of come into decision-making roles and start to run, PR firms and corporate communications departments, they're going to want a way to distribute that content that has nothing to do with press releases.
Yeah, good point. In fact, you talked about the utility of the modern press release in an article you wrote for Bulldog Reporter back in February, where you wrote, but as our media consumption habits continue shifting toward video and picture-based formats, businesses can no longer rely on text alone. I think that's very true. So to help PR pros stand out, you created the Digital Asset Direct service at NewsDirect. Tell us a little bit more about that service and the idea behind it, and what you see it doing for PR pros.
Yeah, well, Digital Asset Direct is simply the name we gave to the ability to send out standalone multimedia. And essentially, on top of being able to do it, we also felt it was necessary to make the process of doing it very simple and very straightforward. So that's what we did on our platform. In the same way that you would go onto our platform and upload, say, a press release, you can go on there, and in the case of a video, all you're really doing is posting your URL into the content studio. It automatically populates there. You put in a caption if you want, a headline and a dateline, and you choose your distribution and you send it. So the process itself is very, very simple, very fast. It just offers a completely new opportunity to PR people and now even content marketing people to do more with that content that they've been creating, more than just putting on, say, on most social media sites or on corporate websites and things like that. So it's just a way for them to, expand sort of the universe of what they can distribute and how they can promote their brand or their client in the case of PR people.
I see. Okay, thanks for explaining that. Despite the changes in the comms tech space and the myriad ways PR and marketing professionals can get their messages in front of audiences, got owned media, social media, paid media, newswires still aren't going anywhere. So what best practices would you share with PR professionals who want to have more of an impact with their next release?
Well, first of all, I would like to agree with the fact that I don't think newswires are going anywhere. And I also don't think press releases will be disappearing anytime soon. All I'm saying is that there is the need out there, and it will continue to develop for there to be other ways of distributing things other than press releases. So in terms of best practices, in the world of press releases, which still predominate, the entire newswire space, and will continue to do so for a while, the first thing to do is to make sure that you're respecting your audience, right? And by that, I mean, don't send content to geographic areas that have absolutely no interest in that content. Don't send it to journalists who don't cover, those topics or those industries. Do your research, make sure that you respect who you're sending it to. And if you do that, you're going to have a lot better chance of someone either writing about it or reading it. So that would be what I would say is to, just really be thorough in terms of what you're trying to accomplish and target the right audiences to accomplish that. Don't just kind of blast it out there and see what sticks. That's a worst practice, if I could call it that.
Indeed, that is an age-old truism there for PR. Make sure you know who you're talking to. Very good. Thank you, Greg. Now, what's a myth about the comms tech space that you'd like to debunk, or maybe just a bad habit you'd like to address?
Well, I think, and I've experienced this over the entire 3.5 decades that I've been in this business, is that the most important thing about distributing content is to make sure the content itself is good, right? Simply sending it out over a wire service just because it goes to a lot of places, that doesn't guarantee you anything. The content itself will speak for itself, and the better the content, the more likelihood you have of getting it covered or getting it read by your target audience. So it's really important that you focus on quality content, not so much on quantity of content, right? You really need to cherry pick the very best topics and things that highlight the your brand and what they're good at, and what they're trying to accomplish in what they're doing, and do that in a positive way. So it's really about focusing on the quality much more so than the quantity of it.
I agree with that very much. Yeah, I think when you're writing these releases, you should be anticipating and then answering some of the questions you might expect reporters to want to know about your news. Very good. Thank you. Now, what is something that you're really excited about right now, whether it's personally or professionally?
Well, professionally, I would say we're really excited about the conversations that we're having with organizations that traditionally have not really partook in the the news wire and news release distribution process, because those organizations, and part of the reason why they haven't done it traditionally is because most of them are new. But essentially, there are a lot of platforms out there that are, for example, streaming news platforms and video content producers and things like that, that are now seeing what we could do on the multimedia side, and that gives them a whole new opportunity to promote that content, whereas they didn't have that opportunity before. So we're really seeing that as a big growth driver for our business, way beyond the newswire total addressable market. We believe we're moving into a completely new addressable market that is just now emerging and is going to really start to accelerate.
I see, Greg. Okay, thanks for explaining that. And then what do you say? This is always a tough question. Brings back a lot of bad memories, but a lot of important lessons too. What has been the biggest failure you've had, and what were the lessons you learned?
Well, I think I grew up in the business, for the most part. The first really half of my career was spent in sales, right? So when you're in sales, you make a lot of mistakes, right? And there's a lot of things you regret because it's you're under a lot of pressure to produce new customers and new revenue and that kind of thing. So I think for me, it was really a matter of the biggest mistakes I've made have been in not being, I would say, forthcoming about what the expectations of using our service, that service at the time, because you were anxious to impress, and I think the most important thing you can do is be as honest as you can about your product, and I think people will respect that. If you have a good product, I think most people will accept that. No product is perfect, and I think if you're clear about that and you don't try to oversell it, then you'll be more successful. So I'd say the biggest mistake I've made in the past, I've been really kind of overselling something and not being completely accurate about what to expect and what the results are going to be.
Yeah, I see what you mean, and those are very wise words of advice you gave in that regard. Thank you, Greg. Now, finally, how can people connect with you?
I'm very accessible. You can get me by email, gregg.castano@newsdirect.com. And that's probably the best way to reach me. I'm constantly looking at it, whether I'm at the office or at home or on vacation or anything else. So that's probably the best way to reach me.
Okay, thanks, Greg. All right, and that is all the time we have, everybody. Thanks. Again, we have been chatting with Gregg Castano. He's the founder and CEO of NewsDirect. So thanks again, Greg, for joining us today. Appreciate your time.
Same here.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Now, we hope you enjoyed this episode of PR Profiles brought to you by Agility. And in these last few seconds, we'd like to tell you about our updated media intelligence services. Collecting media mentions is easy, but uncovering insights amidst all the noise is a lot harder. So let us do the heavy lifting. With media intelligence, you'll receive curated media briefs and executive-ready reports straight to your inbox. You can learn more at agilitypr.com. So thanks again to Gregg Castano, and thanks to you all for tuning in. I'm Richard Carafel with Agility PR Solutions, and we'll see you on the next episode.